So by now, I'm sure that most people know about the viral segment on the Jimmy Kimmel show where he talks about the traumatizing experience that him and his family went through where they had a newborn child that was born with a heart condition. Now, throughout the course of this segment, he was crying, and he talked about how nobody should ever have to go through this and also have to simultaneously worry about whether or not they have healthcare. Just everyone who has a sick baby should be able to get that baby taken care of. So, I mean, he made some political statements. He talked about the need to protect Obamacare, or he certainly implied it. And, it's not like he made this ringing endorsement of Medicare for all, but his heart was in the right place. I wish that he would have talked about Medicare for all, but he didn't. But nonetheless, I think that the point that he made was largely agreeable. He said it doesn't matter if you are Republican or Democrat. We all care about, protecting families and sick babies, right? So what he said was perfectly reasonable, But nonetheless, there were still some Republicans who were triggered by what he said and decided to come out and attack him, revealing that they are, in fact, the party of death, and they're just misanthropic. I mean, call it what it is. The Republican Party, they hate human beings. They're committed to destroying life on the planet, and if anyone comes out and says otherwise, who talks about protecting human life, well, then they got a problem with that. They get triggered by that. So, according to CNN, White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney called Kimmel's clip Wednesday very emotional before sharing his own story about his 17-year-old triplets being born with health issues. "I've seen the agility of having a premature baby or sick baby," he told Fox News, before adding, "Everybody, I think, agrees with Jimmy Kimmel. We have enough money in this country to provide care for those types of folks." But Mulvaney pushed back on the idea that Republicans who are currently trying to pass legislation to repeal portions of the Affordable Care Act want to block people with pre-existing conditions from receiving health coverage. Former Illinois Representative Joe Walsh, however, tweeted that Kimmel's sad story did not obligate Americans to support the Affordable Care Act. "Sorry, Jimmy Kimmel, your sad story doesn't obligate me or anybody else to pay for somebody else's health care," the nationally syndicated radio host tweeted Tuesday. "Got no problem with Jimmy Kimmel tearing up and getting political. Got a big problem with we need government-run healthcare because of my sad story." Washington Times columnist Charles Hurt accused Kimmel of making a personal story partisan. After his slobbering wet kiss to federal bureaucracy, Mr. Kimmel then went squealing on about Obamacare and how insurance companies, the government, and your neighbors should all be forced to pay for everybody else's health care, the conservative wrote. Easy thing to say for a gazillionaire from Hollywood. Daily Beast conservative columnist Matt Lewis said Kimmel's monologue was a little cheap. "I completely understand where Jimmy Kimmel is coming from," he said Tuesday on Anderson Cooper 360. "The passion, I think, is sincere. I don't think that this is the right move for him to politicize this." Okay, so for any Republican who spoke out against Jimmy Kimmel, you're just a bad person. You're a scumbag. Just admit that you hate human beings. I mean, think about what they said here. Don't politicize this situation. Well, look, I hate to break it to you, but any medical emergency is just inherently political because of the way our country is. If you have a medical emergency and you don't have health insurance, you either die or you go bankrupt. If you do have insurance, but you have a high deductible and you have a medical emergency, you still might die or go bankrupt. That's the state of the country. Now, you can make it so that way healthcare isn't politicized and pass a Medicare for all system, but of course they wouldn't do that because Republicans are bankrolled by the health insurance industry. So these scumbags don't like it when anyone says something that contradicts their narrative. When we talk about, togetherness and all coming together as a society to make sure that babies don't die because of lack of insurance, they don't like that. I mean, they're literally attacking someone who is standing up for the lives of babies. Aren't they the pro-life party? Don't they rail against people who have abortions? I mean, what's happening here? This is one of the dumbest things they could attack Jimmy Kimmel for, and really it shows that they just have no regard for human life. In fact, they hold us in contempt. They don't like human beings. It's so clear. Now I want to get to what they said. So Mulvaney, who could empathize with Jimmy Kimmel, he said that the Republican Party, they're not actually trying to block people with pre-existing conditions. But that's exactly what you're doing. Your bill, the American Health Care Act, would give governors the discretion to allow health insurers to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. Because if an insurance company wants to charge someone with a quote-unquote pre-existing condition, which again, it's up to the insurance company to determine what is and isn't a pre-existing condition, but if they say they want to charge people with a pre-existing condition an exorbitant cost, if they want to charge them $900 a month for healthcare, and if they don't agree to that cost and they don't get healthcare and they die, you're screwing them over. You're going to leave a lot of people out, and many will die as a result of your contempt for humanity. So Mick Mulvaney is a liar. And honestly, the fact that he is telling me about having a similar situation with triplets, so he could empathize with Jimmy Kimmel, that makes me view him even worse. Because if you could empathize, if you've been in Jimmy Kimmel's shoes, then how can you sign on to a healthcare law that will make it so that way more families would lose their health insurance? How could you do that? So if anything, you're not humanizing yourself. You're telling us that you're the scumbag that we thought you were. Now we have Joe Walsh. He can't stop saying idiotic things. He said, it's a sad story, but that doesn't obligate us from helping out other citizens. So you mean to tell me that in a hypothetical situation, if you had money to spare, and you knew that a baby would die if you didn't spare that money, you're honestly going to throw your hands up and say, oh, I'm not obligated to help, it's not my problem? That's honestly what you're willing to do, Joe Walsh? Because if so, you're just an asshole. You're a bad person. That's sickening. See, this is the difference between liberals and conservatives. So when it comes to liberals, they've kind of always stood by this philosophy up until recently of we're in this together. But conservatives always believed in yo-yo. You're on your own. So if you get sick, if you need help, we don't come together as a society to help each other out. We just let you die. What's the point of even having a country? I mean, when we pay taxes, we are giving the government money for certain services. We expect them to give us paved roads to drive on. We expect the military to defend us from external threats, and we certainly expect them to protect us if we need health care. But Republicans are saying, no, you know what, it's not my problem. Jimmy Kimmel, he's just politicizing this. He's an opportunist. No, you're being opportunistic. What Jimmy Kimmel is saying is something that any reasonable person on the left or the right should believe. And if you don't, you're just a bad person. You're misanthropic. Just admit it. I mean, it's already bad enough that the Republican Party is doing everything they can to undo what little progress we've made when it comes to climate change, but they're doing more to strip citizens of their health care. I mean, we couldn't even keep a right-wing healthcare policy. They decided to vote to repeal that and take that away from us as well. So they just don't want us to have anything. We're supposed to suffer. The rich are supposed to get richer, and we're supposed to get poorer. Well, good luck trying to sell that to your constituents, because it's not going to work. People are waking up. And by and large, America is a progressive country. When you poll them, when you look at the issues, we're progressives. So continue to do this, Republicans. You're going to get your way now, but in the end, you will not win.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.